All right. And happy anniversary or happy America Day or whatever it is today. We're going to do a nice beer here tonight with Maxwell Star and crew on Beer Analysis 101, doing something in honor of the American holiday. And of course, we're taking a look at Budweiser, the king of beers. Oh boy. The world-renowned Anheuser-Busch's Budweiser lager beer. Anyway, let's introduce the panel here. We've got the only American that decided to show up tonight. We got Joe. Thanks for coming in. You know how hard it was to try and get somebody from down south of the border today for this special episode?
I just want to let you know in advance, I regret everything.
Good. I'm pretty sure I'm aware of. And we've also got from the UK, we've got Craig, Kent Beer Reviews. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thanks. Very good. It's been a good, like, 24 hours or so.
Oh, yeah, since the hangout last night. And thanks for...
No, not that. No.
24 hours. Whatever. Anyway, yeah, thanks for staying up late to subject yourself to this.
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Hopefully you're drinking as cold as possible. We also got Chris that's drinking this, I think, as cold as possible. And Chris from On the 10th or Chris Izak Photography. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. First of all, I wanted to say happy 4th of July to Joe over there.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy. Oh, never mind. Happy post-Canada Day.
Thank you.
Happy post-Canada
Day.
Indeed.
Yeah, and so today Joe and Craig are going to fight. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's in the after show, though.
That's like celebrating, what happened. What was it, 242 years ago or something when the British and the U.S. were fighting? Anyway, whatever. Speaking of fighting, we've got Greg Bielski or whatever it is here tonight. How are you doing tonight, Mr. Sir?
Really excited to be here on America's birthday, drinking America's beer. Fine, crisp, refreshing. Going to be delicious. This is going to be a high one, fellas. Nice to see an international panel. We got Joe from the U.S. We got someone from the UK. We got me from Canada. And I don't know where the rest of you guys are from. Nick's from Niagara.
New Brunswick, you moron.
Oh, no, PEI, that's right. And then Chris is from Niagara, which we don't know what country that is.
No, and this is probably going to be one of our least watched, maybe, Beer Analysis 101s, because we've got all kinds of competing chats going on tonight, even though we're scheduled. It's 4th of July, so not a lot of people are watching anyway, and we're also drinking Budweiser. And yeah, that's my fault. It's not totally on me. So I better get into the story on this before I totally insult everybody who likes this beer, which I am. Anheuser-Busch traces its roots to the Bavarian brewery, founded in 1852 in St. Louis, Missouri, by German-American brewer George Schneider. Still waiting for that Anheuser-Busch reference, huh? Schneider's brewery expanded in 1856, but soon ran into financial difficulty. By 1860, the brewery was on the brink of bankruptcy and was purchased by William Donch and Eberhard Anheuser, a prosperous German-born soap manufacturer. The brewery then changed its name to E. Anheuser & Co. Adolphus Busch, a wholesaler that had immigrated from Germany to St. Louis in 1857 at age 18, married Anheuser's daughter in 1861. Adolphus served in the Union Army for 6 months during the American Civil War, and after the war began working as a salesman for Anheuser's company. In 1869, he purchased the remaining shares from William Dench in the brewery and worked as the company's secretary up until Anheuser's death in 1880. Busch was the first American brewer to use pasteurization to keep beer fresh, and first to use the mechanical refrigeration method and refrigerated railroad cars for transporting beer, which were first introduced in 1876. Which, yeah, I guess that's 100 years. This is American Centennial, whatever. In the 1870s, Busch returned to Europe to study changes in brewing methods and became enamored with the Pilsner style, including a visit to the town of Budweis, modern-day Český Budějovice, which we talked about 2 weeks ago when we did Budweiser Budvar, a.k.a. Czechvar, in the Czech Republic, where he tried beers from Budweiser Burgerbrau, Impressed by the purity and quality of classic German lager brewed according to the Reinheitsgebot, he decided upon returning home to create his own version of Budweiser and to be marketed as a premium beer from his brewery. This combined with Busch's ability to transport beer turned Budweiser into the first national brand of beer in the United States. The brewery would change its name to Anheuser-Busch in 1879, and in 1896 introduced a super premium beer called Michelob. So they called Michelob the super premium beer above Budweiser. Anyway, Adolphus Busch died in 1913, ceding control of Anheuser-Busch to his son, August Anheuser-Busch Sr. Prohibition in the U.S. Dealt a huge blow to all breweries in the country, but Anheuser-Busch stayed afloat by producing brewer's yeast, malt extracts, ice cream, and a malted soft drink called Bevo, or Bevo, I believe it's called. Anheuser-Busch recovered from Prohibition and by 1957 had become the largest brewer in the United States. Over the years, Budweiser has had numerous memorable marketing campaigns, such as the Budweiser Frogs, the Wazaf commercials, as well as the classic Clydesdale horses. More recently, campaigns have focused on being brewed the hard way, bullshit, and proudly macro beer. In comparison to the rising trend of craft beers, Budweiser also temporarily rebranded all their cans to America during the run-up to the 2016 presidential election to try to boost patriotism. There's also like what Chris and Greg I think are drinking. There's also in Canada they released the Blue Jays cans during the time, capitalized in Canada on the Canadian patriotism side for they're like when the Jays were in the run-up to getting into the World Series. But yeah, that's why I think those cans that you're drinking are like 6 months old. But anyway, Budweiser has also had a long-running trademark dispute with Czech Brewery and current mantle holder for the title of the original Budweiser beer, Budweiser Budvar. Ongoing since 1907, more than 100 court cases have been filed around the world, many of which in Europe have been decided in Budvar's favor. As a result, throughout most of Europe, Budweiser Budvar retains the right to use the Budweiser trademark in the European Union, and the American beer is simply just called Bud. In the UK, though, both beer brands are allowed to use the trademark Budweiser, so both of them are called Budweiser there. I believe that's correct, right, Craig? Anyway, in November 2008, in a hostile takeover, Anheuser-Busch merged with Belgian brewing conglomerate InBev to become AB InBev, creating the largest brewer and ending generations of involvement by the Busch family, as following the buyout, August Busch IV, a great-great-grandson of Adolphus Busch, was ousted from the company. Since the takeover, AB InBev has been accused of sacrificing quality with cost-cutting measures, including a 2013 lawsuit against AB InBev for watering down products like Michelob and Budweiser with the practice of diluting stronger brewed beer with water to use the same base beer to create lighter beers, but this was thrown out of court. Other brands from Anheuser-Busch, other than Budweiser, include Bud Light, everybody's favorite light lager apparently, Michelob, which we mentioned, Busch, Natural, like as in like Natural Ice and Natural Natty Daddy and all those beers. Land Shark, the non-alcoholic beers O'Doul's, and of course Shock Top, which was introduced a year before the buyout from InBev. And of course, there's all the beers from the InBev portfolio, which is so numerous, I'm not even going to talk about those. So Budweiser today is a 5% ABV American Adjunct Lager brewed with 30% rice in addition to hops, malted barley, and yeast. So no longer conforms to Reinheitsgebot. A notable aspect of Budweiser is that beechwood chips are added during the aging process, allowing yeast to remain in suspension longer to absorb and process green beer flavors such as acetaldehyde and diacetyl. Acetaldehyde, anyway. Giving a beer a cleaner taste. Budweiser is brewed in the Canadian market by Labatt Breweries, also a subsidiary of AB InBev, and by InBev UK for the UK market, which I think was the original Bass Brewery, but I couldn't find enough information on that. So moving right along, let's get into personal histories, which I'm sure are extensive for this beer, because I'm pretty sure that everybody on this panel has had this at least once about 10 years ago.
We should check the comments first.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's go to the comments first.
That's on you,
Joe. That's on you, Joe.
What happened? I'm only here once in a while. I don't read comments. Oh, well, luckily we have one comment. It's from a person who doesn't matter. His name is Raining on Your Parade. He says, damn it, he could not find this mega rare beer. He looked everywhere. It must be a limited seasonal. Maybe I can find it on special order. You are the most non-patriotic piece of shit I've ever seen, Raining on Your Parade.
Also, you were.
Yeah, that's true. Also, you could have got a Budweiser and joined us. You've bought a lot of crappy beer for this fucking show before, so that's on you, buddy. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's literally all the comments we have.
Speaking of buying crappy beer for this thing, Joe, what's your history with Budweiser?
I don't really want to talk about it. Let's just say this: it's going to be vastly different than like the average beer drinking American, as in, I was not a beer drinker prior to about 10 years ago when I first found craft beer because I didn't like what I thought beer was, which is adjunct lagers, basically. I mean, I've had it enough times. Probably first time I ever had it, late teens, at a high school party, and it was a beer. Things happened. Probably if I had it numerous times. I don't know. I didn't really ever keep track of it. The last time I did have it, though, was certainly over 10 years ago because I haven't drank this beer in the last 10 years. And in this area in Western New York, this is basically Labatt Blue land. It rules the area here. Yeah, because we are, a neighboring state to the great country of Canada, and more specifically the province of Ontario. Labatt sells extremely well here. So well, in fact, that they're opening up that Labatt brew house that I talked about earlier to Chris about that we're going to go check out potentially in the fall in the downtown Buffalo area because that's how popular it is here. So when you go to barbecues or parties or whatever here, usually it's Labatt Blue Light. Even Molson Canadian gets more play than the Buds, Miller, Coors of the world. So I don't ever seek this out. If it's between this and say your 5 or 6 regular other macros, I don't go for this one. So have it. So make a long story even longer. I've had it plenty of times. I haven't had it though in probably about 11 or 12 years. So and that's it.
Yeah, it almost seems like in your area, if Labatt's such a big thing, it might have been because like the original thought of Canadian beer entering the market was import. Well,
I think they import it in New York. They import it in New York State and Western New York. I know that's like a big importer here for them. And yeah, I mean, we get all kinds of weird shit from Labatt here, like their grapefruit shandies and their lemon shandies and stuff you guys don't even hear about. But we
don't even get those. No,
they distribute them here. Like Labatt's huge here. Like I said, they're opening up a brew house.
Even like Labatt Blue Light, I don't get that here.
Oh, what? What the fuck? You're in a beer wasteland for macros.
Yeah, right. Anyway, we're getting off topic for sure. We can talk about this later. Let's move over to Craig. Have you had Budweiser before? I'm certain you have.
Yeah, I've had this before, probably back in the same teens, maybe a bit before that even, when I was just like, oh, can you get us a crate of beer, mate? And they like, yeah, give us a tenner, and then they'll go in and get a case and all that sort of. There you go. Oh wow, we got beer, and you get pissed on 2 cans or whatever. It's just like that, really, Yeah, I mean, and then on from that, it wasn't really my macro beer of choice over here. It's more Foster's, Stella, Kronenberg, that kind of thing. They're always there. Plus you got your Becks and stuff like that. So yeah, it's beers that I've had, depending on where you are and what's available, get a few bottles or what have you. I've paid varying prices for it as well, depending on where you go. I think I paid something stupid when I was a lager drinker of like £4.50 for a 12-ounce bottle, shit like that. But yeah, it's when you go out with your mates and stuff, you just go along the flow wherever you go, and then that's it really. Yeah, and then probably on from that, here and there, weddings, wakes, all that sort of shit. Whatever's available, it's generally one of these. And just whenever. And then like every other year, probably since, then craft beer come along, and then and then this, the special occasion. So yeah,
yeah, special. But yeah, but it's like one of those beers that's so ubiquitous that you buy it if there's nothing else at the wedding or a funeral or reception or something.
It's always something available like this sort of thing, and you end up drinking it. So.
Cool. All right, let's move over to Chris.
I was gonna joke around and say this is the first time I've ever had it, but you can't lie. I'm 43 years old. Fuck, I had this beer way back in the day, 19, 20s, 18, whatever. It was a beer. It was one of my beers of choice back then. I went through a big Budweiser kick when I was younger. I think I chose it over, Coors Light and Canadian and Blue and all that stuff. I know I really do not like Blue, and I really don't like Bud anymore. But regardless, I was on a big Bud kick way back in the day. I'm like Joe now. I haven't had this beer in a long time. I would rather drink hard alcohol and whiskeys and stuff like that over this if this was the only beer around. You know what I mean? So I'm not a huge fan of Budweiser, and again, like Joe said, I haven't had it in a long time, and this is bringing back memories of old times, I guess. Basically what I could say about it. So I've had a lot in the past, but not so much now. That is all.
Cool story. And I'm sure the one person here that was actually the most excited to be trying this beer. Let's go over to Greg.
Nick, I don't like you spreading these lies around me. I don't know what my history is with this as most of these beers. I don't know when the first time I had it. I know most of the time when I've adjusted this beer, it's been at weddings, because oftentimes, as I say, with weddings, it's usually between this and Molson Canadian and maybe Corona or something else. Sometimes you go to good weddings that actually have actual good beer. Most of the time you don't, so you got maybe 3 or 4 choices. This is often the best choice at a wedding, because quite frankly, this is so much better than Coors Light or Molson Canadian. It's not even funny. I'm not saying this is great, but it's much better than those other options. So at a wedding, this is often what I drink. And that's probably what 98% of my drinking this is, because I don't see any other reason why I would have ever drank this otherwise. Goodbye.
Nice. Anyway, to get into my own personal story about Budweiser, this was one of the first beers that I started drinking when I was when I turned of age. I think I didn't really start drinking when at 19. It was more when I turned 20, and so I think it was between this, Moosehead Products, and Molson Canadian were the 3 biggest ones that I liked in those days. And I think Budweiser was a hair more expensive than the other ones because, American import bullshit. But it was the one I liked the best of the 3. But at the same time, Budweiser, for the longest time, was one of the biggest reasons why I really didn't like drinking beer, because most beers tasted like this. And I drank it, for the social aspect, and drank it to get drunk and all that back in the day. But I didn't really like the big yeasty taste of what I came to associate with the American Adjunct Lager. And it wasn't until that I really started trying craft beers in the late 2000s that I started to understand, and like, beer just doesn't taste like pissy bread all the time. So I definitely faded away from buying this back in my early 20s, and I think the last time I had a can of or a bottle of this was back in 2014, so 4 years ago. And when I actually put it in Untapped, and I hated it then, but I only drank it because it was free. Now this one, well, I'll get into the details of this one for later, but for the longest period of time, I always felt like, Budweiser and beer in general had always had the taste similar to this. But when the craft beer movement arose, this kind of beer was the reason why I didn't like beer before. So moving right along, let's go. Is there any new comments?
Yeah, there's one. Actually, there's more, and literally the last 20 seconds. Ashley Sexton, who could not be here tonight because he doesn't want to drink Budweiser. No. It's probably actually the case, but he says, cheers, fuckers. I'll say this about Budweiser. It was refreshing when I had it ice cold at the Jays game. After 10 minutes, it warmed up and tasted like garbage. If it could stay perpetually cold, it is almost palatable. And then Earth chimes in with a laugh. He found that humorous. And then Ashley says, I'm at work taking a shit, much like how this beer tastes.
He's probably still taking a shit because of the beer he had at the Jays game 2 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all we have.
Yeah. Fun. Well, I guess one way to look at it is if there's no more comments, let's get into final thoughts, which I guess that means you again, Joe.
I'm going to preface this by saying I don't hate this beer. I don't think it's terrible. I will also say that this is crisp, clean, relatively refreshing. But so is seltzer water. This beer in a nutshell, it's very uninspiring and bland, I would say. There's nothing offensive about it whatsoever. There's nice, and by nice, I mean it's there, so you have to enjoy it or you don't. But there's a cereal grain sweetness. Because it doesn't have any corn, you don't get that overabundance of like corny sweetness. It's more of just like a cereal grain sweetness. I couldn't tell you there's rice in here, and I think many people who would say they could are influenced by the fact that it's Budweiser. It has a little bit of like a lemony dish soap thing going on, ever so slightly. I guess as far as style goes, I'd probably give it a slight pass at a 5 out of 10 for style. Like it's middle of the road when it comes to macros for me. Nothing wrong with it, but there are way better macros out there that I would pick every single day of the week over this. Personal preference, this is where it falls off for me. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of adjunct lagers, but I do like some of them. This one for me, again, inoffensive. I could drink it. I just don't want to. So I'd probably give it a ever so slightly lower 4 out of 10 for personal preference. The reason I'm not passing it is because I haven't drank this beer in like 11 or 12 years. I drank it today because of the show and the fact that it's 4th of July and you picked it. You're clever. I love it. Here's the thing. I'm probably never going to drink this beer again unless I am at a wedding or some place where the options are between this and like 2 other absolutely horrific adjunct lagers. Outside of that, I will never go out of my way to drink this. I actually prefer Bud Light over this, believe it or not. And that's terrible, and it's also on me, but I do. But yeah, 4 out of 10 for personal, 5 out of 10 for style.
Fair enough. All right, let's move over to Craig. Get your final opinions.
I'm trying to. I've checked this into Untapped twice before tonight. So that's since 2014. If you probably look, Joe will probably look like he does. Probably won't actually. It's Budweiser. And it's better than the rating I gave it whenever I gave it a rating, but I think I gave it like a 2 or something stupid out of 5. So that's what's out of 4. I'm doing a bottle and a can, and I'm definitely picking up some kind of difference between the can and the bottle, and the can is actually a little bit better than the bottle. This kind of World Cup malarkey bandwagon sponsor thing. It's all right. It's a kind of, I'd put it in the middle of the kind of adjunct lager range. There's worse out there. There's certainly better, as Joe said just before. There is a slight sweetness to it, there's a slight lemony tinge, but it's not something that's really kind of. If you're looking for flavour, then obviously don't buy this. But if you're into lagers, yeah, it's passable, but it's no great shakes really. Wouldn't buy it again generally, just for the show kind of thing. What Joe said before, blah blah blah. If I'm in the certain crowd that drink general lager, then there's nothing much else around, then I might have to get one kind of thing, or a wedding or whatever, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's not something I'm too fussed about. I get it this time of year when it's really hot. Sometimes you don't really care if it's got any taste to it. You just want something to drink cold and get rid of it. That's it. Done. So for my kind of, I'm just going to pick out this one because it's slightly better than the bottle. I'm going to give this like for my own actual personal preference, a 4, and then a 5 for style or overall. That's it.
All right. And Greg, I'm pretty sure you're going to turn this whole thing on its head and give your praising review.
As much as I'd like to talk, doesn't Chris go first?
Oh yeah, Chris does go first, doesn't he? Sorry, Chris. You weren't here last week, so I'm just not used to you being here anymore.
I'm here. Craig, what was your scores again? Sorry, I was typing something on my phone. What was Craig's your style score?
Style score was a 5.
And your overall?
A 4.
4. Okay, that's all. With me going back on talking about memories and stuff like that, I drink this now and I wonder to myself, why did I even go through a Budweiser phase in the first place? I'm not a big fan of this. It's refreshing when it's ice cold. It is warming up right now, so I turned my AC off for the analysis because I didn't want to come through on the microphone and stuff like that. And it's warming up like crazy, and it's starting to taste like I don't want to drink anymore. But I will finish this off. And I'll save. I bought 2 cans actually, and the other can will be given to my brother, who is a Budweiser fan. So I'll give him that beer because he's not really into craft and stuff like that. But don't know what else much to say on this one. I'll just give you my scores. But for the style on this one, I'm going to give it a 5. Just pass it. And overall, I'm giving it a 2. I'm not really enjoying this beer, especially after it's starting to warm up like this. It's very hard to drink. And Ashley was right. If it could stay cold, then it would probably be a higher score. I mean, I'm not throwing ice in the thing and making it into a Bud Light or anything like that, but yeah, exactly. So that's it. So I got a 5 for style and overall 2. That's all.
Nice. All right. Now, Greg, your turn. Greg.
Sorry, I was muted. I actually don't know why you guys don't like this beer. I actually don't find this beer all that bad at all. I'm sorry, my dog was chasing her tail now.
Drinking something else now or something?
No, this is Budweiser. Anyways, no, you know what? Okay, here's the thing: is to me when it comes to sort of the kind of big beers, and I'm going a little bit by memory. This is not bad for what it is. It's like I said, light years better than Canadian, better than Coors Light. I think it's better than Labatt Blue, but it's been a while. My memory's a little hazy. I mean, it's probably not as good as most European lagers, but you know what? It basically has no taste to it. I think it was it Chris who said that this is light years better when it's cold? It is. I pulled this out of my fridge not too long ago. My fridge is set relatively warm because I don't want my beer too cold. And it's okay when you drink it. You know, it's fairly inoffensive. It has a little bit of a wet cardboard taste. I don't know if that's because my can is old or that's just how it tastes fresh. But you know what? It's inoffensive. The one thing I'll say is this beer demands that you chug it because I drank like half my can in the first sip. Like it's just this beer just wants to suck its way down your throat. And I guess that's kind of good because it's good for them anyway because, I could easily drink 4 of these and not even know I drank a beer. So I don't know. For style, if I'm giving it a rating in the macro lager category, so I would put this away from Euro lagers because they're usually actually not filled with corn syrup, even though these sometimes have the same taste. If I'm compared to other macros, I'd probably give it a style rating of 7. I think it's okay for what it is. And my own personal enjoyment, I am going to give it a 5.5. I was going to go 5, but I'm giving it that extra 0.5 because this saves me from having to drink Molson Canadian at weddings. And that gets an extra 0.5 for that because Molson Canadian is vile shit. And I don't even remember what I gave Molson Canadian, but whatever I gave this, take away like about 10 points, and that's what Molson Canadian is in comparison to this. This is that much better. But it still is what it is. It's still nothing special. If you're a craft snob, you're not going to like this. If you're a guy who just wants to drink a couple cold ones with the game and not give a shit, then you'll probably enjoy this. It's fine. And I don't know. I think the color of it's pretty nice.
Right.
Cheers.
I don't know if it's the light there, but that totally doesn't look like a Budweiser you're drinking right now.
No, it's a Budweiser.
Didn't know they made a stout.
Delicious, delicious Budweiser.
Anyway, let's get over to my thoughts on this whole thing, because I think that's something that everybody's waiting to know. Probably not. All right. So, yeah, like everybody else has been saying, it's not bad cold. It's actually pretty clean and easy to drink when you drink it cold. There's a sweet, like, breadiness, a little hint of yeast in it. It's very refreshing when you do drink it cold. There's, and I'm going to say it because I believe it's there. There's a sweet, like it's like a slightly like a boiled white rice kind of note, like that little hint of fruitiness that you get it. And I know Joe was saying that like, oh, you got to be crazy if you taste that in there, but I do, damn it. I do get the cereal grains as well, but as I'm getting to the bottom of my glass on this thing here, I'm finding it as it warms up, it's really starting to get harder and harder to palate. As it warms up, it breaks apart into this cardboard mush. Yeast and the yeast flavors and the creaminess really start to come forward. It's not that clean after a while, and it's getting a bit of this buttercream note to it. It's not like it's like that creamy buttery consistency, but it's not salty like butter. So I just feel like that I'm getting that flavor in the throat, and it's really making it difficult for me to try to chug the rest of this shit. I don't think it's horrible. As it's definitely better than the last time I had it, because the last time I had it, it was just so dull and flavorless. It was just gross. But this time I'm getting, maybe they've improved the flavor a little bit, but it's not enough to save it in my book. I think for the style, you're talking about a beer that's running on the North American Adjunct style. So it's not like a style that in my book has a high expectations. So I'm still going to give it a 6.5 for the style. I know there's bloggers out there that I would much prefer over this. I'm going to agree with Greg, say that it is at least better than Molson Canadian, but I'd still have a number of other lagers over the adjunct lagers over this, like Moosehead or Molson Old Style or Miller Genuine Draft or one. That's a like Miller High Life. Yeah, apparently. Anyway, moving right along, for the overall, I'm failing it. I'm going to give it a 4 just because it's shit warmed up. And that's it. Yeah, no, I agree. Totally agree. So yeah, there you go. Style 6.5, overall 4. We'll hand it over to Chris to do up the numbers, and we'll get back to reading what the comments are, which PA Brew News is now in the chat.
Oh, for fuck's sakes.
Yeah, I know.
Go ahead, Joe. Read the comments. I'm gonna get ready.
Oh Christ. All right. Paul says class meets ass. And he also says, warmer the less enjoyable. Imagine that. Wow. Salty like something. I won't repeat it. Yeah, let's settle down, Paul. This is PG-13. He also says this whole thing is horrible. And then he says lowered expectations. And then he says, just say no. Shout out to Barbara Bush. Or Nancy Reagan, sorry. Nancy Reagan.
Say no to Bud.
That's too funny. All right, I'm ready. Whenever.
All right, we're gonna roll over to Chris, and I'm gonna hit present on Chris so he can give the ratings.
Hi everybody, and here we go. The final scores today on Beer Analysis 101 is brought to you by Big Box of Bang handheld fireworks.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen?
Fantastic.
Happy 4th of July, everybody. Happy 4th of July to Joe and the rest of the Americans watching.
Yeah, I'm glad I spent it with you guys drinking a subpar beer.
And happy Canada Day. Canada Day was only a few days ago. So happy Canada Day to all.
Yeah, happy to us.
Nobody cares about Canada. What's the scores?
Exactly. All right, here's the scores. Here we go. Okay, so our final scores for Budweiser or Freedom Looking at
Freedom.
What are these? These are the scores on
Here we
freedom.
go. 5.7 for style, just past it, and overall we went underpass that.
What's been lower than that for overall enjoyment? I can't imagine too many under 4.
No, this is not in my own opinion, in my own mood.
For fuck's sake.
This is not a good. This is not a good beer.
You can't tell me that Canadian got higher than that, though.
No, that's what I was saying. I agree with you, Greg, and I think Canadian's one of my least favorite adjunct lagers ever made. Period. It's gross. It is absolutely disgusting. This though, I didn't mention it because it wasn't all that warm yet. But what you guys are saying about warming up, it turns into this like sweet, grainy, soggy, wet cardboard mess of a beer as it just gets to not even room temperature, just not ice cold anymore. That's the sad thing about it. If you're not drinking this. If you're not drinking this fresh out of the freezer or the freezer, not the fridge, the freezer.
The fridger?
These would be ice chunks in this one, all right?
Yeah. Good ice pop. Good ice pop.
Yeah, Budweiser ice pop. That's what we need. Yeah, once it warms up, though, it's just it gets like you were saying, Nick, harder to drink. It just doesn't become enjoyable at all. The whole crisp, clean, refreshing thing doesn't matter because now it's slightly warm. So.
Yeah, it's like Coors Light or something where they advertise it's like the taste of a cold one, or
and most adjunct lagers when they start warming up, they just become overbearingly sweet, but it's sweet in like the corny cereal grain type of characteristic that I don't think many people enjoy.
All the garbage that goes into these things, it's something that you don't get as pronounced a note in if you go with like a real lager that's brewed at Reinheitsgebot, because if it's straight up barley, it does. I mean, it's got a little toasted grain note, but it's not this bad.
No, it's not. It's nothing like this. And it's sad because we've only been doing this for 45 minutes or whatever, but we're talking about like 10, 15, 20 minutes out of the fridge, and it's almost like you don't want to drink it anymore, and that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Exactly. You don't want to neck it either. That's the trouble. I don't.
No, I don't either. I know Greg was talking about, crushing this one.
Yeah.
I don't want to crush it either.
I think it's pretty crushable. Like anyone who wants to watch back this video, and if you do, I feel bad for you. You can see I drank half of it pretty quickly. So luckily I had a second Budweiser. So
I have a Chelada-sized can of it, so I'm not necking that at all.
Joe, you kind of fucked yourself on that one. It's almost like you should have bought the 6-pack of $3.55.
It was either like $4 or $5 for a 6-pack or $1.79 for 24 ounces. I was like, I'm just gonna go for the $1.79.
Well, I think the big thing we can all take from this is that if you want to drink Budweiser, and I don't even remember what this costs. I don't remember if it's all that cheap or not around here. But if you're gonna buy a 6-pack or something, keep the 6-pack in the freezer and then just pop one out every time your team scores or something.
What I was trying to say is like you could chug
don't drink it
2/3 of this can while it's still cold enough, and once you get to that bottom part of the can, like if you're just sitting enjoying it with shooting shit with friends, then if you just bought the bottles, you'd have the bottle gone by that point.
Probably.
Whereas this one here, the can's just too much.
Yeah, it is.
Probably the bottles would actually be a better serving size.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
I prefer the can to
better.
This bottle thing, whatever this is. This is a.
What the fuck is that? It's like an entire aluminum can.
Those are the aluminum bottles.
It is. Yeah, it's a special edition. Yeah, and I'm glad it's only a special edition. It's shit.
Holy fuck! Does this ever go downhill when it warms up?
Yeah, it's gross. I'm drinking pouring the last 10 to 12 ounces I have of that can because I don't want the calories, and B, I don't want to drink it because it's gross.
But then if you're into collecting Budweiser bottles and stuff since the 80s, then I guess it's
good. It's like Coca-Cola at that point.
I don't know anyone who does that, Greg.
Except for Coca-Cola still makes a reasonable product in my book. So,
but Coca-Cola is kind of like these, where like if you drink a Coke or a Pepsi, you don't want to drink it warm. It's got to be ice cold, otherwise it's fucking unbearingly sweet.
It's unbearingly sweet. Yeah, I guess
it's all fucking high fructose corn syrup. It's just gross.
But I mean, every cola, even like not like craft colas or something, are still like that. You want to drink it as cold as possible.
Almost any soda pop. It's got to be cold.
Soda beer. But it's almost like Coca-Cola is like a worldwide ubiquitous brand name where everybody knows what it is, and yet they don't go around sacrificing the quality of their taste just to save a buck like Budweiser does. Like ever since the AB InBev, according to the story I read, ever since the AB InBev buyout by InBev, they've been constantly reducing the quality of these beers, and they've done it to other beers too within their stables. Like Beck's has gone seriously downhill as well.
Oh. With Budweiser, they weren't starting out too high.
Yeah, they were.
So it's
yeah. But I just say whatever quality they had, which wasn't much.
I'd be curious to do Bud Light at some point, not because I want to buy it. Don't get me wrong, but I want to see, because I like Bud Light more than this, ever so slightly. I feel like when it warms up, it's not as terrible. Probably because it has less of the grossness because it's lower ABV to begin with, so it's more watery. But I don't know. This doesn't taste like freedom to me.
No, it does not. There's a comment in there somewhere. What's going on in the comments?
Oh, for fuck's sakes. Okay, we got Lee who shows up and he says, "Fuck this show. Bad scores."
Look at Paul's comments here.
And then Raining Iron Parade, we'll leave that to the end because he always does it way too early because that's his MO. Earth laughs at Lee's comment. And then Raining Iron Parade says, "If you cannot drink it warm, it is not worth drinking." Yeah, that goes for like 87% of the adjunct lagers in this world. You let them warm up, and most of them you don't want to drink. Then he says, "I don't think I have ever had Bud Light. Let's do that in an upcoming 101. By let's, do you mean you're going to come on camera and show your face, Raining Iron Parade, or are you just going to be in the comments?
Nah, come on.
For some reason, I thought we did Bud Light. Am I wrong?
Fuck, I don't know. I mentioned it. I probably missed it on purpose.
No, we didn't do it.
No, we didn't. Paul says a thimble would be a better serving size.
But Joe, you prefer that beer over this one, so you wouldn't miss it, would you?
No, it's true. But it wasn't the 4th of July when we did it. If we did it was different. Right. I would be here in a heartbeat.
Yeah. We'll wait till next year.
Yeah, we'll wait till July 4th of 2019. We'll do Bud Light. Maybe it'll taste more like freedom than this one does. Paul says I drink cola warm. Paul says I drink cola warm all the time back when I drank cola. Well, that's you, Paul. You drink your beer 7,000 degrees, so whatever. Then he says milk is the only drink that goes in my fridge. Well, if not, it'll spoil.
You can't drink milk warm? What the fuck's wrong with you?
Well, you might keep it, but you got to keep it cold.
He might keep it in a natural refrigeration of his basement where all the corpses are held.
That's called cheese.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Lee says this whole show can be summed up by a certain beer tuber. He says C-, most excellent.
Fuck him.
And then Paul says this whole chat went seriously downhill since the go live button was hit.
Yeah, that's true.
Paul, you could have spruced this up by joining, but you're a big pussy, so no big deal. Paul then also says world class A++, then asterisk next to it. So
then he ends it with the best comment of the night.
Yeah, I would have got on, but I just couldn't find Budweiser. I even looked in every bathroom I could find. Sounds like you and Raining on Your Parade are best friends for life.
That's fucking hilarious.
And then Raining on Your Parade, this is the last comment, even though it was about 18 comments ago. He says, "What's next week's beer?"
Ooh, what's next week's beer, you ask? I'll show you what next week's beer is. Drum roll, please.
This doesn't deserve a drum roll.
We're going right back to Collective Arts, and we're going to take a look at Rhyme and Reason's Citra Pale Ale.
Ooh, Rhyme and Reason.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you Ontario folks can get it. And I got a month-old can, so that should hold out.
Super fresh. This would be really cool if it was 200014 again. Tell you that much.
Yeah, right.
Joe, can you get that? Or...
Now,
I can.
One thing I thought was kind of cool about the Rhyme and Reason is that I think on your can, Craig, it still says Extra Pale Ale, doesn't it?
I didn't even look through it. I think so. Yeah.
I don't think it's a different recipe at all, but I think they changed the name slightly. So it's now called a Citra Pale Ale.
Are you stalking Craig's pictures? Is that what's happening?
Oh, Redbeard said it had brought it up in a chat where he was like, I think they changed the name of it recently because I saw 2 cans on the shelf of this, and one was Citra and one was Extra.
I think mine's Aprilish, late April, May.
Yeah, like so it just happened in May kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway. All right.
Two last comments. Lee said Paul and myself had serious business to attend to. We don't need to hear about it. You guys keep that stuff private. That's a lot of fun.
Sounds like
Was it sex business?
It seems like it. Then Paul says, "Indeed, we did, Lee." Sounds like it. And this is about time you did a craft beer. # first craft ever. You don't even watch the show, Paul. You don't even know. You're so ignorant to this show that all your comments don't matter.
Ah,
We're gonna
geez.
start calling you
He's on the show.
rating on your parade because you're terrible. But I
I
still
have
love
I have a fun story about next week's beer, but I can probably only tell it if we do the show offline. So
you. Well,
Yeah. You wait for the offline portion to tell us that story.
Yeah,
yeah.
you can probably tell it online.
And where you inserted the can. Anyway, so yeah, I think
You know it.
Anybody got any final thoughts with Budweiser?
No.
And
No.
shit.
I'll say for a beer this bland, beautiful color.
Uninspiring, bland, and don't let it warm up.
Nice. The more you know.
I got a final thought.
I'm gonna
Do,
present
do,
that.
do, do, do.
Is that just the more you know over and
All
over?
right, go ahead,
No,
Chris.
no,
What are you
no,
saying?
it's not. I'm setting up something. Hold on a second. Sorry.
Oh,
You for sure.
Oh, no, we lost
This
something.
is
This is just
technical difficulties, it seems like, right now.
We're good.
this is incredibly unprofessional. You're making Nick look bad.
yeah,
You're a
That's
star.
hard to do.
This
All
is
the viewers
totally.
he-
This
all the
is
viewers he got-
100% totally true. Pay
All the
attention,
viewers he got from fireworks just completely leaving right now.
everyone. Just pay attention for a second. Listen, fireworks are very dangerous. They should not be held in your hands when you're shooting them off. Please enjoy your 4th of July, and don't kill anyone, and don't kill your hands. Thank you.
Put them between your butt cheeks.
Oh,
That's right.
Oh,
The more you know.
Hashtag
That's
too late.
that's banging.
what was it? There was a story a couple of years ago from Calais, Maine, I think, that some kid had tried to shoot a Roman candle from on top of his head.
Wow.
It didn't end well.
There's also this.
Well, it did
He
end
kinda
well,
lost-
'cause hopefully
let's just
that
say he
idiot
kind of lost
done.
his head over it.
I see what you did there. There's this other story where this beer tuber let the Beer Analysis 101 continue when it should have been shut down so we could go to the after show.